Hey, what is up everyone? Welcome to MST.TV. This is Nishi bringing you all another Market Watch episode. So it has definitely been slower than usual with the Yu-Gi-Oh market recently, without any YCS or regional events, or even locals, right? It's hard to pinpoint developments in the meta, so I think that everyone just kind of naturally assumes that the same decks that were topping before are continuing to top now or would be topping now. Also, without any events to look forward to for the foreseeable future, without knowing when events are going to start back up again, as well as the uncertainty regarding like upcoming product releases and the ban list, it's even difficult to say what period of time we should specifically be looking forward to. This is definitely an unprecedented situation, not just for Yu-Gi-Oh, but I feel like for the world as a whole, so I don't think that anyone has any certain answers by any means. But what we are going to do in today's episode is look at some of the price trends of some of the pricier cards on the market that you guys may have and try to evaluate how their prices are going to move over the course of 2020 and what you guys should be doing with those cards. Let's get started. Alright guys, so first up, let's talk about Lightning Storm. So at the moment, I feel like Lightning Storm should be a lot higher than what it currently is. So at the moment, we're looking at about $110 to $115 a piece for this card. Now, before all the events and whatnot were canceled, we saw this card trending up towards $150. Now, while some people might argue that this price decrease is because of the Ignition Assault Special Editions, I would ultimately disagree. I don't think that there's enough value in the set outside of Lightning Storm to justify people opening a ton of product where it's going to drive the price down, since not even the promos are anything like super special. What I do see happening is a lot of people panic selling Lightning Storm, which is what has kind of caused the price to trend downwards. That being said, in my opinion, Lightning Storm is a hold/buy. If you have it already, I would hold it and not be in a rush to sell it unless you can get some crazy value for it. If you don't have your set already, I would be looking to pick some up relatively soon. Lightning Storm is definitely going to be meta relevant when events start back up again, as probably a staple 3 of in at least the side deck, so you're gonna want to have it if you're going to play competitive events. Also, because it came out so recently, it most likely isn't going to be reprinted until sometime in mid-2021, and even if it is reprinted then, it's probably going to be as a short print to sell some sort of product, so you don't really need to worry about the card being reprinted anytime soon. Now, I think that at one point, we did see this card hit down around the $100 mark, but then it kind of bounced back up. And I think that that's the kind of trend that we're going to see continuing with this card over the next little while. People will start to sell, but then once it hits that like bottom point at around $100, $105, people are just going to buy it back up and it's going to go back up to $115, $120 maybe. But I do think that at $100 a piece, the card is definitely something that I would be looking to pick up because it is just that amazing of a card, and it has that longer time horizon where you can expect its price to rebound. Next up, let's look at Appaloosa. So on one hand, much like Lightning Storm, this card can be viewed as a staple, albeit in the extra deck. It's a really versatile, generic card, and I feel like it's run in virtually every deck in the game at the moment. However, it is also significantly different. It is typically only played at 1, whereas Lightning Storm is usually played at 3, and it was printed in Rising Rampage rather than Ignition Assault. It's surprising to me then that Appaloosa and Lightning Storm are roughly the same price, as Appaloosa is currently a $105 card. Personally, I'm expecting Appaloosa to decline significantly in value over the next couple of months. Because Rising Rampage falls into the range of sets that would be included as reprints in this year's Mega Tin, let's suppose that the tins get confirmed to come out in August of 2020, same month as last year, and that Appaloosa is in there. That tells us that the tins are about 5 months away. However, given the way that the things are in the world at the moment, it wouldn't surprise me at all if events were canceled for at least 2 months, which would be almost half of that time. Now, it's possible that the time could be more or less, or they could push this year's Megatin type product until later in the year, but who knows? At any rate, Appaloosa is absolutely due for a reprint at some time in 2020. It is such a highly in-demand card that it would be silly for the reprint to be pushed off any further than that. The one saving grace here is that because it's a secret rare, it'll still likely be the highest rarity version of the card unless it gets reprinted as an OTS Tournament Pack Ultimate Rare, so it'll still retain some value in that regard. but because of this shorter window of opportunity with which people will be able to use this card before it gets reprinted, if you have the opportunity to sell this card for full market value or relatively close to it, I would definitely capture that value while you can before a reprint is announced. Alright, next let's look at IP Masquerade. So much like Appaloosa, this card is kind of like a one-of staple in the extra deck, and it is also due to be reprinted by the end of this year. However, I feel like this card has fallen off a little bit. While it was a staple in decks like Orcust, I feel like in decks like Salamangreat, Rockets, or Shaddoll Invoked, they don't really have the room or the need for this card. That being said, while the card did shoot up a bit in price and hit almost $60 at one point, it has since fallen off quite a bit and is currently a $38 card. Now, on one hand, I think that IP Masquerade is going to see more play moving forward. Maybe not right away, right? But the ability to link during your opponent's turn and give your monster a huge buff in that it can't be destroyed is something that shouldn't be overlooked. But on the other hand though, I have the same issue with IP as I do with Appaloosa, and that's the issue of getting value out of it before it gets reprinted. Also, because the card is only an ultra rare, if we do get the same rarity mix-up sort of thing with the Megatins this year, IP would look really amazing as a secret rare. Unless you have a Starlight rare version, then maybe you don't care as much, but still. So with this card, I think that if you're looking for a very short-term bounce as soon as competitive Yu-Gi-Oh picks back up again, then sure, this card does have a little bit of room in that regard. If you can pick it up now for $30 to $35 maybe, and then sell them when events get started back up again for around $40 to $45 a piece, that's not a bad flip, but I wouldn't recommend holding onto this card as a longer term investment, just because a reprint is very likely to bring this card's price down pretty hard. Alright, so we have reprints of Pot of Extravagance and Phantasme confirmed, but the chase card from Savage Strike that hasn't had a reprint confirmed yet is Boreload Savage Dragon. It is due for a reprint, as I believe Savage Strike came out about a year ago, and I'm pretty sure that Boreload Savage Dragon is like the best synchro monster in the game at the moment. With all the different decks that attempt to set up multiple negates, this definitely fits the mold. With how popular Rockets and Dragon Link decks have been recently, Boreload Savage Dragon needs a reprint now more than ever. However, I think that we won't see this card reprinted until the Megatins of this year, and that this card will be used as one of the chase cards in the set. We can't have everything reprinted early after all. However, its price also largely depends on the upcoming ban list. In the OCG, we just saw LP banned, which is a really big hit to those Dragon Link decks. If we see a similar hit here in the TCG, then there's a good chance that Boreload Savage Dragon declines in price, as that's one of the primary decks that utilizes and abuses this card. However, if we see Dragon Link come out of the ban list relatively unharmed, then I would expect this card to jump back up in price to around $50, even with the lack of events, since Rockets are a very popular deck among casual players, especially with the majority of cards being so affordable with the Rocket structure deck. So yeah, with this card, we're gonna have to wait to see how the ban list treats the Dragon Link deck before we can say if this card is a buy, hold, or sell. Next up, let's look at Millennium Eyes Restrict. So Millennium Eyes Restrict finally has a reprint confirmed in a product that kind of came out of nowhere, and that is the Legendary Duelist Season 1 box. This is a card that has seen a lot of hype recently, particularly because of its ability to play around hand traps. You can bring it out with Instant Fusion to work very similarly to Called by the Grave, and it also provides you a body that you can link climb with. In addition, in Spiral, this is a level 1 monster, so you can put a level 1 on board and then resolve Where Art Thou. So this card was pretty pricey, up at around the $50 to $60 price point before the reprint got announced. Then with that announcement, it fell down to around like $30 to $40, I believe. The weird thing is it actually shot back up to $60 after the reprint was announced and has just recently fallen back down to around $50 over the last few days. I don't really know why it got bought up all of a sudden. Doesn't really make sense to me. Maybe someone tried to buy it out, but didn't know about like the reprint announcement or something. Who knows? Anyways, guys, there are two factors we have to consider here. Firstly, will Instant Fusion get hit on the upcoming ban list? I know there's a lot of people thinking that there's a good chance that it will be hit, just because of how good the card would be under the new master rule, right? Where we don't have to worry about the zones or this card clogging up. I could definitely see it happening. I'm kind of on the fence about it. I wouldn't be too surprised if it got hit. I wouldn't be too surprised if it was left untouched. The other thing we have to think about is how significantly this reprint is going to affect the card's price. It is a reprint. It is one of 7 secret rare promos in the Legendary Duelist Season 1 box. However, it is just a 1 in 7 chance of getting this specific card, and you would have to spend a fair amount on the small box of cards for just a chance at it, right? Also, with a lot of other cards probably being more collector cards in a product like this, right? Cards like Red Eyes Slash Dragon or Red Eyes Baby Dragon, not really meta relevant things. I don't know that the product is going to be open like crazy. Therefore, there might not be a huge quantity flooding the market, so the price of the card might not get as low as people are hoping. So again, there are multiple factors here that we have to take into consideration looking forward. Alright, so more ban list considerations here, although maybe not as dependent on the ban list as a card like Millennium Eyes Restrict. So for a month or so, Magician's Souls seemed like the card that was the most sought after in the entire game. Absolutely everyone wanted it, and while it was pretty obvious that the card was good in spirals, people started using it in decks like Lunalights, and everyone kind of went insane. We saw the card go up from $100 to $130. Everyone was kind of afraid it would get even more out of hand given how short printed the card was. However, the card has cooled off recently. We're currently looking at around $90 a piece on TCG Player at the moment. Honestly, this doesn't feel too bad considering where it was before. However, when we look at the 2 decks that primarily abuse this card in Spirals and Lunalights, we have to think about if either of these decks are going to be hit by the ban list and how that will affect Magician's Souls. Spirals were basically a tier 0 deck in the past, and while they're not as good now as they were before, Konami might not want to see them anymore and take action against the deck. Also, with the Master Rule changes, rank 4 spam with Lunalights could be potentially problematic, so they could hit a card like Lunalight Tiger or Lunalight Perfume in order to curb the strength of that deck. That being said, the question that remains is whether or not a meta deck will continue to be able to abuse Magician's Souls if those 2 decks are out of the meta, or if the card will just fall off as support for a dead Dark Magician deck. The card is quite new, so even if we do start to see more and more Legendary Duelist cards being reprinted, this one is still a couple of years away. However, without anything meta relevant to drive the price of this card, it could certainly fall down to around the $50 to $60 mark until something else picks it up. Now then again, at $50 to $60, I would be buying a few copies for myself, so who knows just how low it would actually get, because this card is really good and just so easily abusable. But yeah, depending on what meta decks we see start to develop over the course of the next few months, as well as what we see on the ban list in terms of hitting Spirals and Lunalights and the future of those decks, Magician's Souls definitely something that you're going to want to keep an eye on over the next few months. Alright, and the last card we have here is Pot of Extravagance. So this card is, in my opinion, the card that needs a reprint the most in the game at the moment, more than even Lightning Storm or Appaloosa. The reason for that, I think, is because this card just enables so many other decks like Dinosaurs or even things like Necros, Rogue strategies that otherwise just can't keep up with the meta. Now we finally have a reprint confirmed for Toon Chaos, a side set that we're getting in June, which is really exciting. So while the card was around the $110 price range before, it's now all the way down to around $90, which is still out of what I think a lot of people can afford, especially for those that just want to play casual rogue decks and try to make them competitive. However, what I see some people doing is freaking out and trying to move their Pot of Extravagances right away and just accepting super low offers on them so that they can offload them. I would argue that Pot of Extravagance is going to still retain a lot of its value even after the reprint and probably stay at around the $60 to $70 price point a piece. For one, I think that the original print of the card will always retain some value, especially if it's a secret rare print. Secondly, if I were Konami, I would absolutely make sure that Pot of Extravagance is short printed to help drive the Toon Chaos set and make sure that as much of it gets opened as possible. It's not often that we see cards that are in such high demand like this. I guess it really has just been over the last year or so with cards like Lightning Storm and Extravagance and Appaloosa. Therefore, I think the best strategy for Konami would be to milk the card for as much value as you can, make it a short print, encourage a lot of the product to be open. Just a reminder that Konami's no more short print announcement only applied to core sets. I believe there will still be short prints in the side sets, as much as I and players don't want to hear that. Finally, there is the fact that the set is based around tunes, right? So as much as the cards are probably going to be really cool, really interesting, probably nothing too meta relevant that can really push the set out to the players unless they have something really cool planned that they haven't announced yet. So yeah, while I don't think that now is the time to buy Pot of Extravagance, I also don't think it's the time to panic sell them either. Alright guys, that is it for today's episode. Hopefully this video was helpful for those of you who are holding on to some of the pricier cards of this format and are unsure of what to do with them in today's market. I know that nothing is for certain, especially with the way that the world is right now, so we can only evaluate based on the information that we have available. So next week, I believe that Tombox and I are going to be covering a bunch of ban list discussion type things, as well as covering some stuff from Dual Overload this week and next week. So be sure to stay tuned for all of that content. But yeah, that is it for today's episode. If you guys did enjoy it, please do leave a thumbs up. It does help out a ton. Also, make sure you leave a comment down below if there's a card that you want me to cover in a future market watch. If there's other content that you guys want to see on MST.TV, make sure you leave a comment down below so that we have some ideas for what content you guys would like to see. And as always, if you guys want to see more from myself and Tombox, keep up to date with all of our latest Yu-Gi-Oh content. Also, please consider hitting that subscribe button. And yeah, so until next time, guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.